My superpower is engineering. I've been a roboticist almost all my life now. I think engineering is just as creative as the arts. Engineers, we solve problems. It impacts the world. It makes a difference. Without IEEE, I don't think I would have the network that I have. Anyone can get involved with IEEE USA at any time. There's an immense amount of value for anyone at any career stage.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to today's IEEE USA live stream webinar, Consultants Corner. I'm your host, Jonathan Cho. IEEE USA's goal is to create programming that is valuable, relevant, and of interest to you. We'll be sending a short survey to all registrants after this event and would love your feedback. We value your opinions and would appreciate it if you could take a few minutes and share your thoughts. Today's webinar will be a panel discussion between 3 independent consultants we brought in to discuss topics relevant to consultants, as well as answer audience member questions regarding business of consulting. For audience members, if you have a question for our panelists, please post them in the live chat or comment section. Our first panelist is Bill Grist. Bill has over 40 years of experience in consulting, software technology, systems engineering, project management, business development, and business management. He also serves as the IEEE Foothill Section Computer Society Chair, co-chair of the Foothill Employment Network, and has also managed a Cisco Network Academy where he held a Cisco instructor certification. Everyone, please welcome Bill Grist.
Hello, consultants.
Our next panelist is Charles J Lohr, PE. Charles is an embedded systems consultant and trainer with over 40 years of experience in system design and development in medical, military, and industrial applications. He's a licensed professional engineer in North Carolina and an IEEE Life Senior member, current chair of the IEEE North Carolina Council, and vice chair of the Alliance of IEEE Consultants Network. Everyone, please welcome Charles Lohr.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I look forward to answering your questions today.
Welcome, Charles. Our final panelist is Larry Nelson, Senior, PE. Larry is a senior IEEE member and a board member of the Alliance of IEEE Consultants Network. He's been a consultant since 1980 and is listed as a consultant with Microchip, Parallax, DigiKey, and the Hardware Academy. He has publications and patents and also works as a staff engineer, expert witness, and a technical trainer. Everyone, please welcome Larry Nelson. And Larry, I think you're muted right now.
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar.
Welcome. So once again, gentlemen, thank you all for joining us today. Before we get to audience questions, I do have a few questions of my own I'd ask you. Now, you've all had extensive careers in your consulting, in consulting, spanning years, decades. I'd love to hear from you how you all got into consulting. Can you give us a little background on why you started? Let's start off with Bill, then Charles, then move on to Larry.
Well, I should give just a brief background. I'm a Hewlett-Packard retiree, and prior to that, I was in the defense industry in software development and hardware software design and systems. The way I actually got into consulting was kind of interesting. My first job in the defense industry was in automated test systems, and I was working pretty much extensively on Hewlett-Packard equipment, including the HP 1000 computer systems, real-time computing. And a friend of mine in the fruit industry, Sunkist, I'm sure you've heard of them, he was also an engineer, and he said, "Hey, we have this HP 1000 over here. We need some help." I went to my managers in the defense industry at General Dynamics and got a letter put into my file that said that the fruit industry was not a direct competitor to the defense industry, such that they allowed me to do on my own time and evenings, weekends, whatever, to do consulting work for Sunkist. So I, not even a year out of college, I suddenly became a consultant on my free time and made a few extra dollars that way. So that's really the start. And then off and on, of course, when I was in the middle of my careers, I was doing virtually no consulting. I had no time for that in most of my HP years. But then when I retired, I became an independent consultant for most of that time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bill. Charles?
My start was a little bit unusual in that I started out with a consulting company very early in my career. I started out in telecommunications industry. I actually worked for IDT Telecom and then Northern Telecom, first of which is no longer around. The second is part of Nortel, which I think bought by someone else, Cisco or someone. But my third position was actually working in communications. We were consulting for GE Mobile Radio and actually did international communications systems for, particularly for friendly foreign governments, if you will. And then went from that back into a regular career of working for other companies until about 20 years ago. I decided to start working on my own and got into actually specialized in some areas that it's interesting that if you keep learning and taking on new skills, sometimes you find yourself being the expert in something that you didn't anticipate being. And that pretty much launched my career. And I've been doing consulting work for the last 20 years since then. So it's been an interesting trip so far.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charles, and glad to have you. Finally, Larry?
Well, actually, back when I was in college in the 70s, I had a professor that did a lot of consulting work, and he got himself between a rock and a hard place where a consultant that he had hired disappeared on him, and he couldn't get the job done, and he had a huge contract with the National Institute of Health. So he brought me on as a consultant to help wrap up some of the design stuff that he needed to do. And I did some consulting for him and really enjoyed it. So fast forward after that, after I graduated and I was working in industry for a company designing temperature controllers, and I wanted to do consulting and hang out my own shingle. So I talked with my boss, and he decided that I could do consulting on personal computers, the old Radio Shack TRS-80s, and that wouldn't be a conflict of interest with my electronics design work I was doing for them. So I started doing computer programming for local businesses to allow them to use the Radio Shack TRS-80 to do various business tasks. And hung out my own shingle, founded Nelson Research in 1980, and have been doing it in various levels of commitment, part-time and full-time, ever since.
Fantastic. Thank you, Larry. And once again, thank you, gentlemen. We're really excited to have all of you here today with us. I know a good chunk of our membership is comprised of independent consultants, so I know a lot of them are really excited to hear or interested in becoming consultants. So I'm sure they're very excited to hear any tips, best practices, insight that you can provide to them. So this first question, or next question, what was the most challenging aspect of starting out as an independent consultant? And feel free, and anyone can feel free to jump in at any time if you have a response.
Well, just to continue, I guess my story a bit there. I had no clue how to start. I just knew that I had this side job with another industry there, but still working on the same type of computer that I had expertise in. So I had to figure out how to write up an invoice. I mean, so the very basics. And I know Larry has a lot of good slides and a workshop on the nuts and bolts of it. But really, I guess I would say getting the nuts and bolts down and trying to figure out how to bill someone and how to manage that side of your business, which is totally different than your day job.
Very interesting.
I agree with what Bill said. A big part of it is learning business. Not something we typically learn in engineering school. Such things as keeping books, marketing, and all of those other skills. So I actually found local community colleges and resources such as SCORE to be great resources for learning some of those skills to help build the business.
Yeah, and one of the things for me is I got myself a CPA early on to handle taxes and to give me some business advice on the various things that you can and cannot do, for legally for your business. And one thing that I'm reminded of continuously is you really have to get your spouse or significant other or whoever on the same page as you are. When I said I wanted to do consulting, I sat down with my wife and I said, this is what I want to do. And here's how I'd like to do it. And we worked out together, what I could and could not do so that it wouldn't impact the family and yet allow us to, build my business up.
Very interesting. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I can imagine it'd be very daunting, especially early off in the beginning when you don't really have much of a foundation. You're still trying to build that foundation. I can imagine having a family and others involved, even though you might be considered an independent consultant. There probably is some sort of teamwork with other people who might be involved. That might be a part of that that equation. Thank you.
One other comment, as Charles said, at least when we were in engineering school, when I was, we didn't get any flavor of the business side. And the bottom line is you're going to have to get that background experience or hire the help, as Larry said, get a CPA in there. But one way or another, you have to get it, or you'll fail at any position. Certainly, as an independent consultant, you'll fail. You've got to get those business basics down, including the marketing side.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that, Bill. Definitely there is a bit of technical and non-technical skills that might be involved. Thank you again. So we'll move on to audience questions for now. This first question, Daryl asks, I'm not a PE. Can I still become a consultant?
Oh, absolutely. I started off doing consulting work years before I got a PE license. There's a couple of things you cannot do. You cannot be an engineering consultant. If you say you're an engineering consultant or that you're doing engineering, you have to have the license. Otherwise, somebody will come after you. Beyond that, being a licensed PE is a very powerful credential. And later on, I'll talk about, some things you can do with a PE license that you can't do without one. But a lot of the kind of work that I do, and I believe that Bill does, doesn't fall under traditional PE type work, but it's more along the lines of falling under an industrial exemption. And the big problem is, as an independent consultant, you're a business. So if you hold yourself out that you're doing engineering to the public, you've got to have that PE license.
I'll agree with Larry. Well, Bill's a good example of someone who is very successful at this without having a license. And one thing that I will strongly encourage is that you check with your local, with your states. Typically the board or whoever regulates engineering licensing within your state as to what the rules are, because I found it changes from state to state. Here in North Carolina, as Larry said, I can't even call myself an engineer without being a PE, or else they'll definitely come after you. You can only call yourself an engineer if you're an employee of a company. But if you're a one-man shop and you call yourself an engineer as an employee, that's treading on thin ice there. I found some states actually you can use the term engineer, but not professional engineer without a PE. I do emphasize what he said. If anything that's toward public safety or other types of activities, you definitely need the PE. I also did a lot of work in my early consulting when I was working for a company as a consulting company. The work we did not fall under needing a PE license. It's helpful. Again, if you're going to call yourself an engineer, it's worth it to have it. And again, credentials are part of it. This leads to credibility, particularly when you're trying to market yourself to someone who is not familiar with your work.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charles. Bill, anything to add?
No, that covers it.
Thanks, guys. This next question, Michael asks, how do you manage your interests and what do you want to work on in contrast to what customers' needs are? Did you follow your passions or the market customers? Well, let's try that first question first. How do you manage your interests and what do you want to work on in contrast to what customers' needs are?
Well, I'll just make a quick comment. You have to balance your interests and passions with the marketplace, and getting business in the door is going, and what customers needs are going to oftentimes win and tip the scales. Love to hear the other guys' comments on that.
Yeah, when I looked at that question in both parts, my answer is yes. The issue is, you've got to make a living, you've got to bring money in. But if you're not enjoying what you're doing, why are you doing it? So it's balancing between the two, absolutely. And there's plenty of work out there that you can do that does follow your passion and that will pay you for it. I do a lot of embedded microprocessor design work, and I enjoy doing it. But if I just market myself as another embedded microprocessor guy doing Arduinos or doing PIC microprocessors, the business market out there is such that competition is a race to the bottom as far as earning income. But when they start looking at what my qualifications are, what jobs I've done, now that I've been doing it for a while, I can command enough money to make it worth my while. And so I can blend the two together. So you've got, like I say, you've got to enjoy what you're doing to get you through the lean times.
Absolutely.
I agree. Fortunately for me, my passions tend to be wanting to learn about the next cutting edge thing anyway. As I mentioned before, that's how I end up getting into my current position. Like Larry, I do a lot of embedded systems. At one time, it was all, the fledgling Internet of Things, which is now pervasive in everything else. And now we're into edge processing and AI and whatnot. So typically my home work tends to be in playing with the latest and greatest of that, which helps keep you current, because you have to stay current with this. What was my specialty 10 years ago nowadays is pretty much obsolete. It's just the way our industry goes.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. And no, I'd like to add and chime in that, yeah, I think it's definitely possible to, that question kind of worded it seemed to word that those two are mutually exclusive, which it's nice to hear that that is not in fact the case. So you can definitely balance those two out. Thank you. So this next question is also from Michael. What suggestions do you have regarding insurance?
If they belong to IEEE, get it from them.
Yeah, I run BEAR as far as errors and omissions and liability insurance. the types of work that I do, I'm able to refocus most of that contractually back on my client. I do have general protections if such that if somebody comes into my office and I have a slip and fall or whatever, I'm covered under that. And the way I look at it, even if I had the full errors and omissions, if I do something profoundly stupid and am totally wrong, my error and omissions isn't going to protect me. So that's the reason I go the route that I do. I have had a couple of times had a client look at me and say, we need you to have $1 million liability, error and omissions insurance, or we won't give you the contract. And I've turned around, gotten a quote for that, and said, okay, this is how much you have to pay me for my rate plus this rider so that I can guarantee having the insurance. And in one case, on one job that I was doing for a medical equipment company, when they saw what I was going to add to the consulting bill, they turned around and they indemnified me because they felt that, their coverage could cover me. And I just simply did the job for them and off we went. But the other side of that coin is if you've got really deep pockets from insurance, you can, in some respects, open yourself up as a target. Who are they going to sue? The guy that has $100,000 in assets or the guy that has $10 million in assets? So, it's all back and forth in the way that you can go. If you are looking at insurance, absolutely take a look at IEEE. They have some, I believe at one point, and I may still have it through Lloyd's of London even, for coverage for one of the options for errors and omissions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Larry. I think I did hear Mrs. Nelson in background also mentioning IEEE insurance as well. Folks, I will include a link to the IEEE insurance website. You can take a look at the kind of insurance, professional liability insurance they provide. Thank you again, Larry. Charles.
I would add maybe one thing as a independent computer consultant, no PE, not an engineering consultant per se, but as a computer consultant, I did a lot of work for small businesses, and I got a suggestion or some advice early on. Just make sure that you add an umbrella policy to your your regular home policy provider. Just put an umbrella policy there just in case somebody decides to sue and go back on you as a consultant and look at your other assets and put them at risk. So you can talk to your insurance people about an umbrella policy.
And I agree with those. And one thing I would add to that is to make sure if you are a home office based, as many of our consultants are, to make sure that you have a basic business either rider on your homeowners or to have a separate policy to cover all of your assets, because the computers, the boards, test equipment, everything that's around here is covered under your normal insurance if you can say it's something that you're using as part of a business. So I do have that type of rider on my insurance. So if something happens to any of this, it's covered.
Yeah, and then of course the other thing that, as I was just reminded, we haven't mentioned, if you're going out independent and it's going to be, your sole job, don't forget about things like, your medical insurance and insurances along those lines. You want to be sure you're covered for all of that. Early on, my wife was working and we were able to have medical insurance coverage under her policy. And then later on, for a period of time, one of the things that we did was I operate as a sole proprietorship, and I hired my wife as an employee and I offered all of my employees 100% company paid medical insurance, family plan. So I got around some of the things there and had the deduction for it as well.
Fantastic. Thank you guys. And so I would also like to kind of put the spot, highlight one comment made by one of our audience members, Lynn Copeland, who we work closely with at IEEE members insurance. We work closely with her. She mentions that your home insurance umbrella does not cover your work. So thank you for tuning in, joining us, Lynn. And she's also included IEEEinsurance.com site has a risk management portal with some good resources written by risk management managers, attorneys, and SMEs, so you can find out more about exposure contracts. So definitely nice to have someone from Member Insurance joining us today to give us more insight on that. Thank you so much, Lynn. Great to have you.
Wow, luckily I was never sued for and had to use that. Thank you. You learned something on every one of these webinars.
Definitely. Thank you again. And thank you, Michael, for the question. So this next question from Tom Coughlin, previous IEEE USA president. Do you think you work more as an employee, less, or about the same?
I always tell people I'm an employee of my business and I work for, well, I'll keep it clean, a son of a gun. It's stingy as all get out because I keep myself to a tight budget. But it's not the same as working for a large company, no. At the same time, we work for all of our clients. If you are a consultant and active in the business, you actually have a lot of bosses out there. Every client wants you to do things their way, and you have to work at that. So it's kind of a balance in there, but it's a lot different from working for a company per se. You do have independence, but you answer to a lot of other people. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I think you'll find that you work a lot more and you probably work a lot harder, but you're working for yourself. You're the boss doesn't pull into the lot and look over at you and when you say that's a nice Lamborghini, and he tells you, hey, look, if you work a lot harder next year, I can get a new one. If you work more and you earn more, then you get to keep more. And if you don't work, then the income stops coming in. So there's a lot of back and forth on this, but I think you'll find, even though you may work more hours and do more work as an independent consultant than as an employee of some company, you directly are reaping the rewards. So there's a lot more satisfaction to it, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I worked and retired out of the high tech industry, and at HP we all worked a lot of extra hours. I think as an independent consultant, you certainly work the hours committed to your client, but then you do have all the aspects of running your own business that come on your own time. So you end up putting the extra hours in both of those cases, has been my experience, to keep the business running and the billings and the marketing and everything else, staying up with your professional training and society interests in IEEE and so on.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Tom, for the questions. So while we're on the topic of employees, the term employees, I kind of want to shift or kind of bring a spotlight on a hot topic that's been discussed and kind of continues to be discussed even now. You've all heard of the AB5 or Assembly 5 bill, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And for our audience who don't know what AB5 is, it was a legislation passed in California and basically changed the way contractors were classified. I know a lot of our California members who are independent consultants have been heavily affected by that. Basically, if you're hired by a company, whether you were originally hired as a contractor or temp worker, they're now going to classify you as an employee, so legally entitled to benefits. So my question for you all, uh, do you have any insight on how that can negatively excuse me, how that can negatively impact independent consultants?
Well, I'm California based and have followed this issue from back when it was proposed in state legislature and there was a lot of fighting going on. And a lot of it came about in the Uber, Lyft, ride sharing industry was really kind of who was targeted by that initial bill, but then it ended up affecting all kinds of other gig workers and independent consultants or independent workers in a whole wide variety of industries, entertainment industry, movie industry being one of the big ones, the writers that were California based and all. When that passed, the next year, a lot of independent writers, let's take as an example, were terminated by their publications in other states because no one wanted to be sued in California court. So it's still, I guess, from my perspective, I'm no expert in it at all, but from my perspective, it's still being fought out in California in various flavors. And there even was a proposition to then exempt, Uber and Lyft drivers. And so there's all kinds of legal ramifications that are still continuing. And I would just suggest that you get some type of legal expertise or help if you're going to take on any work that's California based and see how that law would affect you. I'm not sure about the other states that we're watching California and if they've enacted similar ones. Maybe you guys know in your states.
Yeah, Massachusetts has been threatening the same type of legislation. In California, one of the exemptions that were added onto the bill was that if you're a licensed PE, you're exempted from it. Massachusetts, the initial paperwork didn't have that exemption in it. So I don't know what's going on with that stuff right now. I think one of the other things was the multiple clients. So that right off the bat makes it very difficult to get started, because when you get started, you typically start with one client. And right off the bat, well, if you only got one client, you're their employee. So there's a lot of stuff that's really bad about that. I know of a couple of people that were doing work for the film and entertainment industry in California, as finding contestants for their reality TV shows and that type of stuff. And they actually moved to Florida and do their work out of Florida because the law doesn't reach out to them there. And same thing with a lot of the writers in that. They've simply moved a state over, a couple of states over to get away from it. So I think it's very hard for the independent consultants, but it's also hard for the small mom and pop businesses, the 5-employee business that is building a product that has some technical guts to it, and they want to hire a technical consultant to get them over that hump, but they can't afford to have a full-time engineer because they've only got a couple of products and they don't need the engineer except for when they need them. So you're going to see a lot of small companies flounder and fail if they can't get access to the independent consultants to keep them going.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Charles, anything to add?
No, I think Larry's pretty much covered it. Unfortunately, I'm not dealing with any California businesses or clients this time. It's been some challenges in the past. They have met out of state engineers for a long time, in my opinion.
Definitely. Thank you, guys. And I do want to highlight one comment by Tom Coughlin. So for the Consultants Network of Silicon Valley, who Tom is a member of, they did a survey of consultants in California on the impact of AB5. They found that 25% of those who took the survey were impacted one way or another. So, this is definitely wide-reaching on the on IEEE members. He also goes on to add the U.S. PRO Act, which is now in the Senate, which I believe impacts the U.S. overall, which is a similar legislation to the AB5, but Tom states it would allow contractors to be allowed to collectively bargain rather than be made employees. So a little bit different, but still impacts independent consultants one way or another, possibly negatively. So thank you, Tom. I'd also like to take this moment to let our audience know that IEEE USA hosts a biweekly legislative update hosted by IEEE USA Director of Government Relations Russ Harrison, where he provides updates on current events on Capitol Hill, around the country, and important issues and legislation relevant to IEEE members that are being discussed, which often include updates significant to consultants. So if you'd like to learn more, subscribe to our IEEE USA Washington update. We've provided a link to it below, so definitely worth tuning into. So let's move on to our next question. This question, excuse me. One of our audience member asks, what's the most challenging about marketing your consultant services?
Be known.
What is it?
It's always been a thing. If you're not known in the market that you're trying to reach into, you have to do something to get that visibility as a competent engineer. There's again, as Bill said, Larry has some excellent slides on these that we do for our workshops, but such things as speaking at, of course, IEEE conferences and other market areas, teaching, if you have expertise in areas. Of course, nowadays, I think, particularly since the pandemic, everyone out there has got a YouTube channel or TikTok or something where they're out there showing their expertise, and there's nothing wrong with that. Letting people know that you have these skills. Another way is, of course, as you build clients, you get word of mouth. But again, getting that first start in there was a challenge. When I first started 20 years ago as an independent consultant, nobody knew who I was. And I had to have some way of showing someone, I know about these particular skill areas, and there's things I can do for you.
Yeah, and I mean, something else that can help a lot is writing. I mean, if you're looking at writing articles or writing a book, I mean, it's nice, it's satisfying, it's a lot of work. And if you look at the amount of money that you earn for doing that work, it's nothing. However, it does build that credibility. The certifications builds the credibility. That PE license that if you see on mine, it'll say that I'm a DFA, which is a Diplomat Forensics Engineering. I'm certified for doing forensics. All of those things help. Getting out there and talking at the various events and so on builds that credibility. But one of the other things too that you want to be sure you do is set aside some time minimally each week to do something, whether it's go to a meeting and talk to people and meet people, whether it's attend webinars and comment. I used to go to beginners seminars when we had a lot of the live in-person seminars. And it was really funny because a lot of the people at the microchip seminars would look at me and say, well, you could teach this course. Well, yeah, I probably could. But I'd sit in the back of the room, and when somebody had a problem, I'd help them through it. And all of a sudden, they get to know me as the person that helped them at that seminar. And I'd pick up business from there every so often. And I'm listed on Microchip's website. I'm listed on Parallax's website. I'm listed on the DigiKey website. All of these things help build that credibility and get people to know you. And then, like you say, that a lot of people are doing the YouTube channel presentations in that. You know, I'm not getting paid by IEEE to talk today, but there's a lot of people that are seeing me talk, and if something resonates a year from now, maybe I'll pick up some business out of it. So all of these things help.
When you look at the kind of the root of that question, you know, what's the most challenging issue about marketing? Really, I think the key thing is how do I get started in marketing? Most engineers probably didn't have a marketing class at all, or a business class. Of many of them in college or around that, they're trying to figure out how to gain their business and to get started. IEEE USA, we have a consultant database. You can pay a very reasonable fee each year and have your resume and your information listed, and you kind of bring the credibility of being tied to the IEEE website. You can state what your expertise is and gain some credibility and be found through easy internet searches for your type of expertise. So I would say any of you should take a look at getting a listing and write up a good convincing resume and information that would be posted in our consultant database. And one or two jobs are going to easily pay for several years of your listing service. In addition to that, as both of the other guys have mentioned, you've got to get out there. If you're in a local IEEE section, if I was involved for a number of years as the computer chair for our section, you're an active participant in those meetings. You're making the others in your section aware of your consulting work and your availability, and jobs and referrals can come from that. There's a number of other professional societies or activities probably in your area that you can find meetings to attend and such, where you can network and get your name out there as a local a computer consultant, in my case, that can help out small businesses, meeting other small companies that cater to small businesses. They oftentimes feast or famine. They have a need to bring some extra help in, and they'll bring you in on a couple of clients where they're swamped, and then remember you for next time when you do a good job. So get out there and participate in professional organizations and get your name out there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And to
Sorry,
take that word challenging, just so that everybody thinks about that for a second, when you're just getting started or you're fairly early in your consulting practice, one of the most challenging things is to keep that consistency of marketing, because you land that big contract, that big job, and you are buried and you're struggling to try and keep up to meet the commitments that you've given. And what ends up happening is, my God, if I market and I get another job, I can't handle it. I can't market right now. But that's the wrong attitude, because you could be so lucky that every time you do something towards marketing, you get another job. If you get a bunch of jobs in the queue and you can't keep up with them, you can subcontract, you can negotiate and delay a lot of times. Or I've done a couple of instances where it wasn't really my expertise, and one of the other guys that I've worked with in AICN or local consultant networks, I just hand the job off to them. Say, hey, look, here, I can't handle this. Like to bid on it, go for it. So you've got all of those options. But if your name isn't continuously being out there, people forget about you. So you've got to keep that marketing going even when you're buried.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. Could I just add one extra comment? We've all probably heard the phrase that it hasn't come up yet, but basically when you're on a consulting assignment, your job is to look for your next consulting assignment. Everybody's probably already heard that. And you can do that in a subtle way, so you're not constantly marketing to your current client to where they feel like you're selling them on extra work over and above what they've already committed to pay for you. But oftentimes you've built that trust. You're doing a good job on the current project, and they either bring other problems to you, or you observe them in their business processes issues or technical issues at that site, and you can contribute a key suggestion and say, I can help you with that, or I can find another IEEE engineer that I know of that can help you with that, and it leads to additional business right there within your own client base.
Yeah. And leveraging off of that, one other thing that I always do, I'm not looking for another job. I don't want a job, but every time I get a call from a headhunter or a placement agency, I spend 5 or 10 minutes and I help them. I point them towards somebody. And one of the reasons that I do that is now I'm at the top of the list for their phone calls, because they kind of know they're not going to get me, but they also know they can make one call and I may get just 5 people that could possibly help them. So that keeps me at the top of the list. And the one time that something comes by that is really something I'd like to do, I can counter propose and say, hey, look, I'm not willing to go for a full-time job, but if these guys are in a bind, I'll do some consulting work and help them get out of this trap while they're looking for somebody. And I've picked up a couple of things that way too. So if you project the fact that you're willing to be helpful, even when it's not in your expertise, you can point them towards somebody else, and that will go a long way. Just don't ever take anything that you're not qualified for, that you're likely to fail at. You do not want to project yourself as an expert in an area that you're not, because that is the biggest way to kill your career.
Absolutely. Thank you for the great insight, guys. And thank you for the great question, Backyard Scientist. So, folks, I know that we have a lot of questions. We'll try and get to as many of them as we can, so stay tuned. So, gentlemen, this next question, audience member asks, do you need a PE license if you're working as a research engineer consultant? And I know the viewer also followed with another question. Any insight about working as a research engineer consultant?
I need a bit of clarification on that as to, research engineer, only because if you can rephrase it without the word engineer, then absolutely you do not need a PE license. But if it needs that word engineer in there, maybe. And it depends on exactly what are you researching, what are you trying to do. I think it needs more information to really answer that.
Yeah, so for our audience member, if you could give a little bit more clarification on that in the comment section, please, we'll definitely get to the question, or get to answering your question. This next question from Carl is there any value keeping vendor credentials current with latest trends? I've stayed in my core competency area. Cloud products like Azure seems desirable to validate knowledge and skills are current.
Larry, you probably have a lot of expertise in that area,
Yeah. You do want to keep current. You want to keep up with everything. I'm a registered PIC consultant for Microchip, and I cover all their product lines. So obviously I'm forever training and forever learning. They come out with 20 new products every quarter type thing, and I have to be able to be aware of them and so on and so forth. So that keeping the core competency up, depending upon what state you're in, some states have the requirement for continuing education for your PE license. Massachusetts does not. However, my NAFE membership does. So I'm continuously taking various training classes on new stuff. Not that I'm always using the latest and greatest. I've got a lot of my clients that, if I tell them if an 8-bit microprocessor can do the job, why are you overcomplicating everything and trying to put a 32-bit processor in there with a lot more headaches and overhead around it? So you don't want to be a one-trick pony. You want to be able to diversify and spread out. And the good thing about that is by being diversified with multiple areas of expertise, you can shift as the market is shifting and always keep busy enough. And on the flip side, when you're out there marketing yourself, you want to be very careful. You're not an expert in everything. When they say we need an expert that does this, you want to be able to say, "Oh, I can do that." We've all got multiple expertise. We've all got multiple things that we can do a really good job in. But if you do too much of a shotgun blast, everybody looks at it and says, "Oh, well, he claims that he can do anything, and so he probably can't do any of it very well."
I will say that when I was doing a lot of Microsoft related consulting, I did pay for the Microsoft Action Pack at the time, and the attended annual Microsoft basically consultant sessions, and kept up to speed. And they gave away all their software at that time so that you could play with it and be able to stay current and work on it. So those kind of things are definitely of value if that's where you're targeting your business development activities.
I agree. Like Larry said, keeping your expertise and your certification with the various vendor products that you're working with, it's not only keeping current with the technology, but keeping yourself out there in front of folks. Attending these back in the days when Freescale was still around. Actually, I go back to Motorola days, but and then bought by NXP. At their various certification. Of course, they used to have an annual conference. Being there and taking those classes and being visible at that was a big part of growing the business. So definitely certification can be a big part of it.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Bill, did you have something to add just now, or?
No, I mentioned Microsoft, but Cisco is another example. I ran a Cisco Network Academy for a while while working for a technology college, and clearly, any of those type of programs, you have to stay current and maintain your credentials and have that credibility when you go into and market yourself for future jobs. So you got to stay up on it. Even I try and listen to at least one technology related. I'm more retired these days, but I try to listen to a podcast or technology shows and make sure that I'm staying current on the computer technology that I need for what few jobs I take these days.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. And thanks for the question, Carl. So, gentlemen, we did get an update regarding the research engineer. So audience member says a research engineer is helping a research lab in study design, execution, data analysis, manuscript writing, custom analysis scripts, biomechanical research in hospital or academic setting. And I'm guessing for the deliverable for this role specifically is usually a journal publication. So based off of that job description, do you think a PE license is necessary to work as that kind of consultant?
I would say a qualified no. I don't think it's necessary. I would want to be absolutely certain not to put myself out there as an engineer, but I would put myself out there as a researcher within this area of technology or study.
Gotcha. Anything to add, Bill or Charles?
No.
Gotcha. Thanks for the question, and we hope that answered your question. So this next question, let's see. Again, from the Backyard Scientist. I have my EIT, I'm guessing engineering training. Do you recommend staying in industry to secure a PE license before moving into consulting, or can I get my PE while consulting as a technical consultant? Any thoughts?
It's state dependent. A lot of states require that you work under a licensed PE before you get your PE license. In the areas that I worked in, it was very, very rare to find anybody that had a PE license that was doing, electronics design with embedded microprocessors, for example. And I got my PE way late in my career. I do recommend checking with your state, seeing when you're eligible to sit for a PE license, to take the exam and so on.
2 times a year.
And they offer it, typically 2 times a year. So I would recommend that as soon as you possibly can, sitting for your license and taking it. I can tell you it was not easy at my age when I went to sit for my PE license to feel comfortable taking the exam, because so many of the things that were on that exam I hadn't seen for 30 years, if ever. So the closer you are to getting out of school when you sit for your PE license or your EIT, the easier you're going to find it to actually take the exam.
I totally agree with Larry. It's totally state dependent as far as what the local board requires. Because I had the same challenge to get my PE. Of course, in my state, you also had to work under a licensed PE for a period of time, and my company didn't have one. I found an outside, if you will, a consulting or side gig with a fellow who did have his PE, worked for him, and was able to use him as my reference. Again, your mileage may vary. It's really need to talk to the people in your own state as to what they're going to require for licensing.
Right.
Fantastic. Thank you. Bill, anything to add?
No, they have the PE knowledge on this.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, guys. And thank you for the question. This next question, Herman, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. How would you structure a company in order to perform your business? Sounds a little vague, may need a little bit more clarification, but any insight, gentlemen?
Talk to an accountant.
Well, Herman, you can structure your company a lot of different ways. I did sole proprietorship. It's just one of the simplest ways to do it. I know others are going in as like an LLC, a limited liability corporation. I've got a friend of mine who is a C Corp to do his consulting business. And one of the reasons he did his that way was a lot of the companies that he worked with would not hire a sole proprietor or an independent. They wanted to hire a company. And so he got his C Corp so he could go that route. So all of these different things are options, and it's just a matter to look through the business entities and see what makes the most sense for you. If you're doing a lot of work with small companies, they tend to not care so much about that. They want to know that you're competent to do the job for them and that they'll get what they need done. If you're going into work for a huge corporation, they're the ones that are scared about, are you an employee or are you truly independent? And if you're a C corp, you're independent. So
Yeah, my first engineering company, because I actually have my second one, was a C corp, and the paperwork was more than I needed at the time. My current structure is I am a professional LLC, which in North Carolina, if you're a professional engineer, you have to be a PLLC, which is taxed as an S corp. So I get some of the benefits of each of them. But again, it's best to talk to the two people that you need to know when you start your business. As a good accountant and a good lawyer to get the advice in order to set these things up correctly. Because if you set it up wrong, you can be in a quagmire that you want to be in. So again, it's good to get the advice for this before you make that decision. Yeah, I go back to something I mentioned at the beginning is look at your local resources for determining these things. Again, SOAR has great seminars on that in most states. Your local community college system may have small business outreach schools. I know we have excellent ones here in North Carolina that typically have seminars on this almost monthly as to how best to structure your business to fit your needs.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Bill. Again, thank you guys, and thanks for the question. So we did get a statement from one of our audience members. LLC gives you options on the tax side. If you incorporate, most people want to do an S corp. Brandon proceeds to go on saying the issue with C corp is double taxation. Look that up before you decide to do that. Thanks for the insight, Brandon. So, this next question, and actually before we go on, gentlemen, I know that we've reached past the hour. Just wanted to confirm with you all if you're okay with staying for about 10 minutes after the hour, just to get a few more questions answered.
Yes.
sure.
Fantastic, thank you, folks. We'll try and get to as many questions as we can. Thanks for staying with us. This next question is kind of a long statement. Retired about a year ago and have had a career as a generalist, mostly in the manufacturing sector. Like to do some part-time work for some extra income. Would like to move into using his degree in the power distribution industry, where Paul has no experience. How does he decide what to concentrate on? I guess in regards to becoming an independent consultant in the power distribution industry, I'm assuming.
I think it'd be hard to market yourself if you have no experience, even if you have your degree in power distribution. And Paul, I'm assuming like me, as you're retired, you were in school many decades ago. You really need to go with where you have something you can demonstrate. At least that's how I feel about it. It's going to be hard to find someone to be willing to work with you where you just really don't have that experience to rely on. What do the rest of you think?
I would agree. The key reason for hiring an independent consultant is to get that niche, very detailed expertise in a particular area. So I think you're going to need to look back into your career and say, okay, my programming background, you mentioned controls engineer, pick one of those and then, hang out your shingle, as Larry said, in that particular area where you can build and show a detailed resume to help someone in that area. But moving to something that you don't have a lot of background in power distribution, that's going to be tough to get started, I would think.
Yeah, I agree with these guys. It's a really rough thing. The only thing I could think of that you might be able to do something with is if you could get involved with a startup that's doing some sort of alternate energy, solar power at the homes, that type of a thing, and kind of leverage that to start getting a little bit of experience on the distribution side and some of those things. You might be able to back into a little bit of it that way. But beyond that, I think it would be a real hard uphill battle.
Thanks for the insight, guys. And thank you for the question, Paul. This next question is probably a common one that a lot of consultants, especially starting ones, ask or want to know. How do you get new clients to consult for? So I guess, like, how do you find new clients? Do you have to search on your own for new clients, or how do you build a list? Any tips, best practices?
Try the IEEE consultant database for a year and just see if that can help you. And we covered that earlier in some depth on the marketing question. I think that'll be in the notes. Is this available for replay online later?
Thank you for asking that, Bill. So folks, in case you're wondering, this webinar will be archived in our system after the live broadcast ends. So it'll be available for viewing on demand at any time. We have also included the link to the database that Bill mentioned, the IEEE USA Consultant Finder, in the comment section as well. I'll include the link again, but yeah. So I know we did cover that pretty extensively in the marketing question. So we'll just move on to the next question for now. Thank you for that question. This next question from Eric. I have other experts in our industry working through my company. It offers them an avenue to provide their expertise to the market. How prevalent is this versus just being an independent consultant? So I guess having a company with multiple employees versus just being an independent consultant. Is it common?
It's quite common. I've done it through various agencies that find work for the individual consultants and go that route. I've also done it with a couple of groups of consultants for our local consultant network in Boston and in Worcester, where my expertise is in embedded processors, for example, but I may not be very versed in RF. And the project I need is going to have an embedded microprocessor and a control system, but it also has to communicate via RF and through a cell phone back to somebody's database somewhere. So 3 or 4 of us would get together to be able to do that job. So we have some, kind of loosely organized groups, but sometimes a company will form around that type of a thing to bring expertise of various areas with a common goal. So, whether it be, like I say, the job shops or the companies that are a consulting company or independent, there's multiple ways you can go.
I might give an example. I think that's relevant to this question. I've gone into various situations trying to look for consulting work, and I've approached it from the standpoint of an independent consultant, and that was my preference. You get into the discussions with the company that you're dealing with, and they say, "Look, we for liability reasons or for our corporate policy or whatever." We're going to require you to be an employee, and you can be kind of a consultant, or I wouldn't say independent at that point, but you can be a consultant, but you've got to work under our umbrella and our programs, and plus it covers all of your liability issues and all that. So I'm still thinking of myself as approaching this as an independent consultant, but in reality, I was pretty much forced, if I wanted that job, to go after. I pretty much had to take their employment offer, and I still tried to approach it as I would an independent job. That came up time and again, and it also solved a lot of my insurance and liability issues. I think Larry ran into that, I know, a couple of times as well.
Yeah, I got hooked on that. And basically, for example, I did some work years ago for Data General, and I went in there independent, and they said, well, we can't deal with this. You have to go through this agency. And I said, well, this is how much money I'm going to make per hour. And the agency tacked their markup onto it, and everybody was happy and off to the races. And the good news is, if you end up having to go through a company like that to get in and do that, you become a W-2 employee of that company for the duration of the contract. And when it's all said and done, while you're out there deciding which direction you're going to go next, you had a W-2 employment. So you can now collect unemployment on that.
Fantastic. Thanks for the insight, guys. And thanks for the question, Eric. So gentlemen, we'll answer this. I have this one last question from our audience and close it off there. Brandon asks, do you only use a fixed price model, or is there something else you have done to help obtain/retain clients?
I've done fixed price contracts if I know exactly what it is that I'm going to do and what I'm going to deliver. And I write up a contract, and in that contract, I say, this is what you're going to get, and this is what it's going to cost. And if you make any changes, there will be adders. And, cover myself that way. I've got clients that have woken up and smelled the coffee and realized, hey, if we let him bill us for the hours worked, we're actually better off. And because if you're billing on a fixed price contract, you've got to bake in all the contingencies. What if this thing takes me 4 hours instead of the hour I think it can do? So you're going to bill them for that. You're charging them that 4 hours. And one of the things you want to be careful of is when you do a fixed price contract that you don't get yourself into the situation where they can say, well, since this only took you half the time, you're going to reduce the contract, right? No, you gave me the liability of it up front. And in this case, I won. If it had gone the other way and it took me twice as long, could I go up on my rate? The end customer always wants to do what's best for the end customer, and you've got to do what's best for you. So, again, I've gone fixed price, I've gone hourly, and if it's the type of thing you really don't know enough about the project to be able to give them a fixed price quote, and they're insisting on fixed price, I've quite often done things where I break it into phases, and I say, well, we're going to do a study. And at the end of the study, you're going to have a proposal that will give you a fixed price to complete the whole thing. And here's how much you're going to pay me for this study. So they know how much they're on the hook for at that point.
I do a number of fixed price, but I had to learn a lot about contract law over the years. Feature creep is something that can plague us at times, particularly if you got a new client, you're not familiar with their practices. So they always want to change something, and you say, okay, that's fine, but it's not part of the original contract. I tend to go toward a fixed price for each stage of a project. So we get initial prototype, it's going to be this much to do. The next step is going to be that much until there's enough unknowns in there. It's like Larry said, you have to cover all the contingencies if they want a totally fixed price that they know it's going to be no more than X number of dollars. And if you get in half time, it's still going to cost them X number of dollars. It's not going to cost as much. You don't know that you had to work 20-hour days in order to make that shorter time.
You're muted, Jonathan.
Sorry about that, folks. I didn't want my typing to be too loud on the screen. Bill, anything to add?
No, that pretty much covers it.
All right. Well, all right, folks. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Apologies if we are not able to get to your questions. As mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, we will be sending a short survey to all registrants after this event and would love your feedback regarding this webinar. If you enjoyed today's webinar and would like to see more like these, let us know in that feedback survey, and we may plan more of these in the future. We'll also archive all of the questions that we weren't able to get to today and save them for that if we have more of these in the future. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today and giving your
Jonathan, what could I just? This might be the subject of a whole nother hour event, but just in the way of closing, being pretty much retired, I would like to have everyone plan for their retirement, and maybe IEEE can help them and have a session that would allow independent consultants some options and ways to look at. But don't neglect that as you go along, and you get those big contracts in, set them aside. And we don't have time to go into ways and how to do it, but that might be something to close on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that insight, Bill. Definitely something to keep in mind for our members who are retired. So thank you so much again. But anyways, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today, giving your insights into the life of an independent consultant. We really enjoyed having you all here and answering the questions. And thank you to our.
I'd like to thank everybody who's been asking these great questions. I think it's been a good session for all of us.
Definitely. Thank you to our audience for your great question. If you or someone you know is interested in becoming an independent consultant, IEEE USA does have a library of resources you can utilize. Like our panelists mentioned, we've included links to it in the comment section for your convenience. Check back daily on our social media for future live stream updates, and we hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take care, guys.
Thank you.